In this video, I'll show you how to paint Roboute Guilliman, Primarch of the Ultramarines. And buckle in folks, this one's a complex one, so as well as paint, you're going to need a little bit of patience and a can-do attitude. Okay, let's have a look at the sub-assemblies for Guilliman. So we've got his body with his arms, we've got both heads, so they're primed white. The body is primed black then with white over the top, and then it gives us focus to make sure the sword is nice and white. And then the base, that's sprayed white because we can use a lot of contrast in there. And the back part, I've just kind of left it chaos black. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to get this model blued up. Now, if you've got Macragge Blue spray, or if you've got an airbrush that you can put Macragge Blue through, then I would recommend that you do that. Otherwise, we're just going to go ahead and we're going to apply Macragge Blue all over the armour. Doesn't matter if we're a little bit messy at this stage, because we can just come back in later on and we'll do all the trim. So just make sure you get that blue into all of the detail on the model. I was using an old brush there, which I thought would be fine, but I'll switch to a smaller brush just to get it into everything like that. And you can go around this quite roughly, quite quick. Just make sure you get all the bits that need to be blue. It may need a couple of coats as well, so if it does, you know what to do. Just get back there and get the second coat on. So there we are. I'll leave you to do that, and then when we come back, we'll have a look at the gold trim. So once you've got all that Macragge Blue on, we're just going to take some Drakenhoff Nightshade. We're going to wash all over the model with the Drakenhoff, and what this does, it kind of helps pick out where we've got some of that, some of the detail. So this is a nice, easy, straightforward step. Just wash all the way over the model with the Drakenhoff Nightshade, and then we'll come back and we'll start the gold, because we can actually see what we need to paint gold now. And just take your time, just be careful not to let this pool anywhere. And make sure you get all that Macragge Blue. Okay, once that Drakenhoff Nightshade is dry, we can find our way on towards the gold. So my brush is a little wet there, which is why that gold was getting a little out of hand. So you just want to take your time with this and make sure you don't go over anything that you've finished. I think that there is an inevitability that you may make some mistakes on this part, and that's okay, because this is quite a fiddly part when it comes to the model. One really important thing is don't attack the model with your brush looking like that, because that's just too much paint. So what you want to do is you just want to twirl your brush into a point, and then you can address the model. So there's quite a lot of gold trim. As ever, reference the box art to find out exactly where it is. And what we want to try and do as much as we possibly can is use the edges of our brushes, or our brush, because I'm assuming you're only painting one-handed, not two-handed, and then just work your way around, taking your time. If you make a mistake, it's not the end of the world at all, because we can just take that Macragge Blue and fill it back in, and just be careful when we're kind of shading it with the Drakenhoff Nightshade. So I'm going to leave you there. I'm going to crack on and get the rest of this gold trim painted. If you're not sure what does need to be gold, check out the box art, and we'll come back when it's all done, and then we'll start to shade it, and then we'll highlight it, and then we'll do the blue. And once we've kind of got this trim out of the way, it'll come together really quickly. So that was pretty emotional. If you still like me and the channel, and you still enjoy miniature painting, excellent. So all we're doing now is we just want to shade all that gold with some Reikland Fleshshade. Man, that was painful. That was a lot of lining that we had to do there. So thanks for sticking with me. And we just want to work our way around now. So basically everything we painted gold, we want to put the shade on. We just want to be a little careful when it comes to some of the gold trim. So I'll swap to a smaller brush when we get to that, but just work this in all the way, and then we'll come back and we'll highlight the gold next, and it'll start to pull together a bit better then. And we start to get some variations of the shade on the model. Once that Reikland Fleshshade's dry, we want to get that first highlight on the gold. So we're going to use Liberator Gold, and what we're going to do is we're going to use the shape of the model as much as we can, just pull the brush along it, leaving that Reikland Fleshshade in the recesses. So you want to be careful, take your time, try not to get that on any of the blue, but what you'll see is it'll really start to brighten up some of the gold. And it should also be fairly easy and fairly quick to do, because we're just kind of going over what we've already done, and we're just catching the top, pulling the brush over it. So I'm doing the backpack at the same time I'm doing this exactly the same way. So we just want to brighten up everything. So work your way around all the model. Once you've got everything done, we'll come back and we'll put a last sharp highlight on the gold to really make it pop, and then we'll have a look at the blue armour, get that finished, because that's going to give us an idea of how the model's looking and how the different colours are working together, so that actually it'll turn out a lot brighter than what we had following our first sort of application of all the colours. That is a lot of gold, so let's just get the final highlight done and we can forget about it. So just to take some chrome from Vallejo Model Air, and what we're going to do is we're just going to highlight the sharpest edges where the light's going to fall, and we're just using the edges of the armour to just give us that nice sharp highlight. So work your way around the model. This will really lighten up some parts of it, so use it sparingly. If you make any mistakes, as ever, you can go back in with whatever colour you've accidentally gone over. And don't forget, we're going to do this on the the backpack as well. So all the bits that we've just painted gold, we're going to just give them this kind of sharp highlight. So get that done, come back, and we'll have a look at the blue next. That gold's looking pretty good, really nice and really nice and shiny. So let's start on the blue highlights. The first one we're going to do is Calgar Blue. And in terms of how we're going to apply this, it's going to be like a chunky highlight. So we just want to brighten the blue up as much as we can. So take your time with this, because we don't really want to be going back in and repairing all the bits that we've already done. Essentially what you're looking to do, especially on here, is just painted it within the the raised detail. So you've got quite a bit of that on the chest area. It just highlights up the Macragge Blue. So leave it in the Macragge Blue in the recesses, and just work with the Calgar Blue there to get a little bit of a highlight in there. When it comes to things like the Power Fist here, you can just do that normal edge highlighting where you move the brush and catch those sharp edges, and the backpack will be exactly like that as well. And then on the things like the back leg here, you can see we're just looking for to get a nice along the inside line of some of that detail there, just to brighten it up a little. So I'll let you carry on and do the rest of the armour, and then we got a sharp highlight to put on it, and then that's the bulk of the model done. We can move on to some of the more exciting things like the sword, the face and the base. That should have brightened up the blue quite a bit. So what we want to do now is just want to put a sharp highlight in. So the colour we're going to use for this is Fenrisian Grey. Where you've got things like the hand there, you can just pull along the kind of the sharpest edges to make sure you get a nice sharp highlight. And then I'll show you on this leg here, what we're looking for is we're looking to just get that highlight inside the Calgar Blue that we've put in there, and this will just give it that brighter colour. So things like the feet here, again, you can catch the edge, and always try and catch the edge of the model if you can. So work your way around the rest of it. Don't forget the backpack. That's the blue and the gold, the main part of the armour done. The agony is over, thank God. Let's move on to the silver metallics next. Should give you a nice lighter blue now, and it's starting to come together a little bit. And when we kind of do the white and the scroll work, it'll start to jump up a bit more. Before we jump onto the silver metallics, we're going to take some Abaddon Black, and we're going to paint in all the kind of ribbing between the legs. It's the belt there as well. And if you're not sure, have a look on the box art to see where this needs to go. And do the kind of the casing on the heavy bolter under his arm as well. Just cover that all up. And work your way around. Take your time, enjoy it, because it's been trauma up till now. That's just me speaking. I hope you've enjoyed it a little bit more than I have, but it has been a tough model. And don't be afraid to go back and fix some of the bits that you need to later on. It's perfectly okay. Remember, it's going to be a centrepiece model, so you want to get it looking as good as possible. So get all that black done. If you want to do some of the cabling as well, just check on the box art to make sure that you're doing the right bits, and then we'll come back and highlight it. Highlighting any black that you've done then is really simple as well, so just going to take a little bit of Mechanicus standard grey. Where we can, we'll use the shape of the model, otherwise we'll just carefully draw in some of those highlight lines. And when it comes to the back here, you've got quite pronounced ridges, so you can just work the brush along them. You don't have to go overboard. This part's probably optional, but I guess for a centerpiece model we might want to do it. So it just adds that little bit of extra interest for the eye. So there we are, that's done. We'll have a look at the silver metallics next, I think. So the colour for all the silver metallics, I'm going to use Iron Hands Steel. And you're just basically looking for all the silver parts based on what the box art is. And just, again, take your time here not to get it over anything you've already finished. And the biggest areas that we're going to be looking at painting silver are where kind of all the wires connect and join up. And of course we've got the heavy bolter on the hand of Dominion there, which we can just paint up as well. So nice and simple. Don't forget the backpack, and just work your way all the way around getting all the silver metallics done. You've got some parts in the armour and the knees there as well, so just take your time getting those done. You don't want to go spilling this anywhere. And we'll come back and we'll shade it down next. Shading the black is really straightforward. Just take some Nuln Oil and work it over everything that you've painted silver. Standard rules apply. Take your time, enjoy it, and be careful when you get to bits that you've already finished. So again, not a huge amount to see here with me just adding this Nuln Oil, so we'll cut that there, and then we'll come back when we're ready for the next step, which will be highlighting all the silver. Highlighting the silver once the Nuln Oil is dry is pretty straightforward. Just going to use some chrome from Vallejo Model Air. If you haven't got access to the Model Air, you can use Stormhost Silver, which is the Games Workshop equivalent. I just prefer the Model Air because there's less surface tension on the paint. It's thinner, so it kind of goes on, in my opinion anyway, a little bit easier. So you just want to work your way around highlighting the bits of silver that you've shaded with null oil. Again, remembering to do the backpack as well. And then when we come back, we'll do the wiring, the little bits of cable, and then we'll jump onto things like the purity seals, scroll work, and the white kind of Ultramarines icon. So we get that model to really pop, and then when we come back after that, we'll finish this part of the model there, and we'll get onto the sword then. So painting the cable is nice and straightforward as well. In fact, most of it's straightforward, apart from that armour, which is just a nightmare. So I'll show you on the backpack here, just using some Mephiston Red just to paint in these cables, just being careful then not to do exactly what I just did and lose control of the brush. But that's an easy fix, so you should be okay with just one coat of Mephiston Red for this. You shouldn't need too many. Just make sure you get all the kind of little bits of cable all over the armour painted with this, and then we'll shade it and highlight it next. So shading the red, just going to use a little Agrax Earthshade. And all we're doing is just painting it over the wires. And if you've made any mistakes and you need to go back in, then you just get this bit finished, and then you can go back in and just fix any errors that you've done through having fat hands like I have, and that'll work. So just take your time, get that dry, and then we'll highlight it next before we hit the lighter colours. When all that's dry, just take a small bit of Wild Rider Red and just highlight the cable. This is a nice easy one. You can just pull the brush along it, just hitting those high points, just adding a little bit of interest to the cables on there. Nice and simple. Okay, so we'll get on, we'll do all the purity seals next. There's quite a lot of purity seals on the model, so make sure you do get them all. So I'm going to use Rakarth Flesh, and we're just going to paint that over all the purity seals, taking your time, being careful around bits we've already finished. Now in some places this will cover in one hit, in other places you're going to have to do a couple. So just take your time and work it in. We're also going to use this to do all the scroll work as well. So in terms of the scroll work, so we've got this one here. So you can see there, that's going to need a couple of coats. And we've also got the scroll work here, which has got Guilliman's name indented into it as well. So work your way around, get everything done with the Rakarth Flesh, give it a second coat if you need to, and we'll come back and shade it next. Before we shade it, I just want to paint the wax seals with Screamer Pink, because what we'll do is we'll shade the parchment and the seal all at the same time, just to kind of tie them together. So just go around, make sure you get the Screamer Pink in, taking your time, and then we'll come back and we'll shade it all next. Before we do go though, make sure you paint the handle of the sword with the Screamer Pink as well. Just remember that, so pop that on as well. Shading's pretty straightforward. Just take some Agrax Earthshade and pop it over all of the areas that we've just painted with Rakarth Flesh. Make sure it doesn't pool too much so that when it comes to the Guilliman's name we can see it, but we've not flooded it. And also just do the purity seals and the parchment and the wax this with the same colour, and then we'll come back, let it dry, and highlight them next. Once that Agrax Earthshade's dry, we want to just kind of highlight these bits of scroll back up. So the first colour I'm using to do that is the base, which is Rakarth Flesh. So I'm just kind of sketching it back in over the kind of high points here. And the areas which are going to grab most of the light. And I'm just going to look towards the ends there and just pull out, leaving a little bit of Agrax Earthshade in the middle there. That gives me a nice base then to kind of highlight up from again. So you want to do that on all the purity seals, all parchment. So again, just picking up those edges and just minimizing the kind of amount of Agrax on them. So work your way around, get them all done like that, and we'll come back and highlight them next. So we're bringing that colour back up now. The last highlight we're going to use for the scroll work is Pallid Witch Flesh. And this is just for the kind of the sharpest edges. So you can just work it around the model. And then for the parchment, just pull your brush down through it like that, and it kind of just gives the impression, when we put the text on as well, it just gives the impression that it's kind of paper and it's got a bit of strength to it. I'll show you again on this side here. So just take the edge and then just pull it down different lengths, and it just gives you a nice impression of the parchment. So do that to all the parchment, and then we'll come back, we'll highlight the wax next. For highlighting the wax, just going to take a little bit of pink horror. And what we want to do is just want to kind of dot it on to some of the wax. Now, if you haven't got pink horror, don't worry. You can just mix a little bit of that Pallid Witch in with some of the Scream Skull. That might help. It won't give you the exact same thing, but you can, you know, build up the shade if that's something you want to do. So just do that all the way on all the wax on Guilliman, and then we'll come back and we'll make a start on the white parts. So we're going to base all the white with Corax White. So in terms of what we've got the Ultramarine icon here on the knee. So I'm just going to put a rough first kind of outline down to make sure that I've caught it all and I haven't spilt over onto the blue. So you probably need 2 coats with this Corax White. First one, just sketch it in to make sure you've got all the parts, and then the second one to make sure it's all a nice solid colour. We've got this little skull here, which we're going to do white. We've got the obviously Ultramarine symbol on the shoulder, but also take this opportunity, just tidy up the sword with Corax White. So if you've been a little bit heavy-handed or you spilt a little bit, just tidy up the sword and just cover it with some of this Corax White, because once we've done all the white on the armour, it's the sword we're going to tackle next. Shading the white is really straightforward as well. So just take a little bit of Apothecary White contrast paint, not too much. Just paint it over all the white that you've just finished. And then let that dry, nice and straightforward. And we'll come back and highlight it next. Once you're happy that Apothecary White is dry, take some white scar. I almost called it skull white then, the old name, but white scar. Basically what we want to do is we're just going to edge, highlight all of the white. All we're doing, we're just catching the raised edges, so you don't have to worry too much. There we can see this coming together quite nicely. So do that on all the white bits, and then that's the white done. We'll come back and I'll just very quickly show you how to do the text on the parchments. To do the parchment text, you need to water down some black paint. So I've just watered down some Abaddon Black. You need a really good point on your brush, and all you're looking to do is just apply some thin lines all the way along the parchment like that. So take your time with it. Experiment with the thickness of paint, what works for you. And that's that done. So that's the kind of main armour and the body of Guilliman done. There's some little gems to do, so I think what I'll do is I'll just colour them in Blood Angels Red contrast paint, and then we'll move on and we'll do the sword as the next part. Okay, so for the sword, we're going to use contrast paint. We're going to move really, really fast. And we're going to use Iyanden Yellow, Gryph Hound Orange, Blood Angels Red, Flesh Tearers Red, and some Black Templar. And like I said, we're going to go really quick. So watch me do it a few times on the video and then try it yourself. So the first thing we want to do is take some Iyanden Yellow and paint this all over the sword. So you don't worry too much about the ends of the flames, just get it around the main part of the sword. And the way I do this is also going to be the way that I do the braziers on the base, so just bear that in mind. Because I won't show you how to do this on the video, but this is the technique I'm going to use. So once you've got that Iyanden Yellow down, next and clean the brush off. Clean your brush off, make sure it's dry, or as dry as can be. I'm just going to take a little bit of that Gryph Hound Orange and we're going to start to work that in down towards the bottom there. And we also want to work it into these flames coming off the sword. So don't worry too much about the blend not being very or particularly tight right now. Just work it off into them. Clean your brush off. And what we're going to do is we're going to take that orange and paint up and down the sword. And we're starting to get that, or we are getting that blend, I should say, between the two colours. So what we don't want to do is we don't want this pooling here, so just always clean your brush off and then just take that paint away. What we'll do is we'll then take a little bit of Blood Angels Red and we're just looking to focus on the kind of the tips of the flame here. Maybe right at the bottom of the sword as well. Just a little bit, not too much. Just adds in that kind of flame effect. Same on that side. And you'll probably notice I've not stopped yet, because I don't think I need to. Just still working a little bit of extra Blood Angels Red, just kind of in these shadowed areas around there. If you do something like that, where you put a little bit too much on, just clean your brush off and brush back. Take some Iyanden Yellow and just blend it across the top there like that, and that'll sit in nicely. And to be honest, we don't need the Flesh Tearers Red, so I'm just going to take a little tiny bit of Black Templar, just right for the tips. And what this will do is it'll just blend in with the red to give you kind of that dark smoke. Like I said, remember, I'm going to use this for the braziers as well. So let that dry and we'll come back to it and we'll highlight it up. Once that's dry, what we want to do is we want to just bring back some of that yellow. So just take some Flash Kits yellow, thin it down a little, and we're just going to paint it up the kind of the one side, the yellow side of the sword. Just like that. And that'll kind of reinstate some of the yellow that we may have lost through the blending process. So we want to let that dry. And then once it is dry, we just want to take some more Flash Kits yellow and start to paint in the kind of the angles and that the flames are forming on it, just to give it that extra kind of depth to the yellow that you see. And we also want to edge the sword. You want to edge it both sides. If we think we want to put a little flash kits yellow up on this side as well, we can. Remember, always paint to where you want them, in the direction where you want most paint. So by painting it this way, we're going to have more paint towards the top of the sword rather than where the brush starts. So we're going to let that dry and we'll come back and we'll highlight it. So to highlight, we're going to take some Dorn Yellow. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to edge the sword all the way up to the tip and on the other side, so it kind of simulates that heat. And we're also going to just really carefully paint up the middle of the sword like that. Now where we highlighted earlier, coming down here, we just want to put a thinner line. So we want the Dorn Yellow inside that flash kit yellow that we've already painted, just like that. And it just gives the impression of extra heat coming off. And the last thing we want to do is we just want to get some real hot spots in there. And to do this, we'll use a bit of white scar. Make sure that it's not too wet. So essentially what we want to do, again, on the outside blade, just like that, gives us that impression of heat. And then we just want to, well, we've got some crossover in here, we just want to spot in a little bit of white just to give the impression of extra heat coming off. So there we are. I probably put a little bit too much white on the outside of the sword there, so I'm going to go back and correct that, but that's the sword done. So for Guilliman's head, I mean, we'll paint the bare head here, because what we do is we do the helmeted head the same way as the rest of the armour. So the first thing I'm going to do is take some Militarum Green. I'm just going to paint this over the laurel. Now, the other parts that I've already finished on here, so the pipes, etc., again, paint them exactly the same way as I did on the armour. So just get that Militarum Green on the laurel and let it dry, and we'll come back and we'll make a start. We'll do the hair first. So first thing we're going to do for the hair is we're going to just give it a little bit of Iyanden Yellow contrast paint. Now we don't want too much, so we don't slapping it on, we're just putting a little bit on and then we're working it round into those recesses. So there we are. Once you've done that, let it dry and then we'll come back and we'll highlight the hair. To just highlight the hair up and get it to its kind of blonde locks, just want to take some Ushabti Bone. I'm just going to paint this over the raised areas, leaving that Iyanden Yellow contrast in the kind of recesses. So just take your time with this. It's quite a nice effective way of doing blonde hair without going too mad. So there we are, that's worked out quite nice. That's the hair done. Really easy, really simple. So we'll do the face next. Right, let's get on to the face itself. So we're going to base it with Kislev Flesh. Nice thin layer. If we need to go back in, we will. Let's get that on nice and simple. When that Kislev Flesh is dry, just going to pop some Reikland Fleshshade on, working it around the face into the features. Now notice I didn't put too much on. Just going to let that dry. Don't put too much on because you want it to pool, but we'll let that dry and we'll come back and highlight it up now and we'll get a good face on the go. When the Reikland Fleshshade is dry, we'll just go back to that Kislev Flesh just to kind of work up some of the kind of sharper angles on the face, such as the nose, cheekbones. Down the side there. If you look at the box art, you can kind of see where the heavy metal guys have put the shadows, so it makes it nice and simple for us to follow in their footsteps and get a nice effect on the face. So we are, let that dry and we'll highlight it up next. So we're going to highlight with Flayed One Flesh, and what we're looking for here is those sharpest edges again, which again is easy enough to pick out. The cheekbones, the chin. It's nice because Guilliman's obviously a little bigger in scale than your normal 40k. It's nice and simple to kind of pick out these areas. So there we are. That's the kind of basics of the skin done. If you're feeling confident, you can do the eyes just to finish them off. Otherwise, that's the head done and we've just got the base left. So Guilliman himself is looking pretty good now. So we've just got the base to finish. So I told you I was going to do the flames the same way as the flaming sword. In terms of the base, I'm going to put a card up in the top here which shows how I paint bases. The only thing I may do differently is I'm going to use quite a lot of contrast just to do it quick and dry brush it over. So cards up there, click that to find out how I paint bases. You should have all the information you need, and then we'll have a look at him on the turntable next. So there we have it. Roboute Guilliman is done and ready for the tabletop. I really hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have, please leave a like and a comment down below, and if you haven't already, then please consider subscribing. I said right at the start it was going to be a little bit complex and you might need a little bit of patience, so I really do hope you made it all the way through to the end. If you like and enjoy my videos, then please consider supporting me using my Patreon link in the description. All proceeds go towards buying paint, models, and making sure that I can produce the best content I can. Failing that, you can see links in the description to all my recommended equipment, and you can also get up to 20% off all your wargaming from Goblin Gaming. Thanks again for watching. I'll see you next time.